everyone, welcome to my show. Today we have Babble, and last we left off, we were in Leviticus. So, we're picking up with Leviticus and animals that may be eaten. Okay, so we're going back to this stuff. Chapter 11. The Lord gave Moses and Aaron the following regulations for the people of Israel. You may eat any land animal that has divided hooves, and that also chews the cud. But you may not eat camels, rock badgers, or rabbits. These must be considered unclean. They chew the cud, but do not have divided hooves. Do not eat pigs. They must be considered unclean. They have divided hooves, but do not chew the cud. Do not eat these animals or even touch their dead bodies. They are unclean. Well, okay. Don't know what about them. I guess I can see the chewing the cud thing, because it would be how their diet is. Like, you wouldn't want to eat something with a bad diet, I guess. But the divided hooves things is a little odd for me. You may eat any kind of fish that has fins and scales, but anything living in the water that does not have fins and scales must not be eaten. Such creatures must be considered unclean. You must not eat them or even touch their dead bodies. You must not eat anything that lives in the water and does not have fins and scales. Okay. I'm not entirely certain about that, but whatever. You must not eat any of the following birds: eagles, owls, hawks, falcons, buzzards, vultures, crows, ostriches, seagulls, storks, herons, pelicans, cormorants, hoopoes, or bats. Well, I guess that makes sense, because some of those things, maybe owls or hawks, I don't know, maybe they, I did talk about buzzards and vultures, so maybe they ate unclean things. I don't know a whole lot about this. I'm coming up with it as I go. And that brings up an interesting thought. Did God just make it up as he goes? You're not allowed to eat anything that doesn't have hooves and doesn't chew cud. I'm sure there was more reason to it than that, but that's a fun thought. I'm sounding incredibly dorky. Let me just go back to reading. All winged insects are unclean, except those that hop. Okay, I don't tend to think about eating insects, so not an issue here. You may eat locusts, crickets, or grasshoppers, but all other small things that have wings and also crawl must be considered unclean. Whoever touches the dead bodies of the following animals will be unclean until evening: all animals with hooves, unless their hooves are divided and they chew the cud, and all four-footed animals with paws. Wait. Whoever touches the dead bodies. I was gonna say, but puppies and kitties. Okay, it's just talking about if they're dead. That makes sense. Moles, rats, mice, and lizards must be considered unclean. Whoever touches them or their dead bodies will be unclean until evening. And if their dead bodies fall on anything, it will be unclean. This applies to any article of wood, cloth, leather, or sacking, no matter what it is used for. It shall be dipped in water, but it will remain unclean until evening. And if their bodies fall into a clay pot, everything that is in it shall be unclean, and you must break the pot. Any food which could normally be eaten, but on which water from such a pot has been poured, will be unclean, and anything drinkable in such a pot is unclean. Anything on which the dead bodies fall is unclean. A clay stove or oven shall be broken, but a spring or a cistern remains clean, although anything else that touches their dead bodies is unclean. Okay, so what I'm getting so far from this is just, it's what it almost sounds like is it's talking about, less like a spiritually clean or unclean, but just like unclean, hygiene. So basically God's saying, hey, don't do this stuff, it's gonna get you sick and maybe kill you, so just avoid it and you'll be good. So God playing mom right now, or dad. Let's not be. I won't be sexist here. No, God playing parent. There. Yay. Not being sexist. Okay, just go back to reading, Sean. In cistern, but if one of them falls on seed that is going to be planted, the seed remains clean. But if the seed is soaking in water and one of them falls on it, the seed is unclean. Okay. If any animal that may be eaten dies, anyone who touches it will be unclean until evening. And if anyone eats any part of the animal, he must wash his clothes, but he will still be unclean until evening. Anyone who carries the dead body must wash his clothes, but he will still be unclean until evening. Well, okay, when they say dead body, I think they just mean if it, like, dies of natural causes. Because, I mean, unless it's just talking about in general, kind of like, just, you don't want to mix when you're cooking raw food and non-raw food. If it's talking about, like, either way it makes sense. I'm just, like, I don't know, if they're gonna make a big deal about, like, a person being unclean, well, I guess they didn't have as good of, like, hand washing and stuff methods as we do, so makes sense. But that makes me feel sorry for the butchers and stuff who everyone's considering them unclean until evening. Like, dude, they're making your food. Come on. Well, I guess they're making their own food, so I don't know. Confusing time, at least by our standards. You must not eat any of the small animals that move on the ground, whether they crawl or walk on 4 legs or have many legs. Do not make yourself unclean by eating any of these. I am the Lord your God, and you must keep yourself holy, because I am holy. I am the Lord who brought you out of Egypt so that I could be your God. You must be holy, because I am holy. Okay, makes sense. Simple enough. This, then, is the law about animals and birds, about everything that lives in the water and everything that moves on the ground. You must be careful to distinguish between what is ritually clean and unclean, between animals that may be eaten and those that may not. Seems simple enough, all things considered. Oh, and then it has a picture of all the unclean animals. Rabbits? Huh. Anyway, I think this section nowadays isn't as much of a thing. I mean, typically we don't think about, or at least I don't think about eating, like, buzzards or hawks or things like that. So there are still some of those things that's just like, you don't eat those unless you go to a foreign country where they have a special recipe for it. Like Vietnamese have a recipe for dogs. That thing's just weird to me. But to each their own. But yeah, I don't think I think that was mainly just about, like, not a whole blah blah sin blah, no. I think it was just about they didn't have as good of method to keep clean as we do nowadays with, all the soap and running water and things like that. So I think it was just about keeping them trying to keep them, like, free of some of these diseases and such. So I think that was the main view with all that. That makes sense. Purification of women after childbirth. Okay. The Lord gave Moses the following regulations for the people of Israel. For 7 days after a woman gives birth to a son, she is ritually unclean, as she is during her monthly period. That makes sense. On the 8th day, the child shall be circumcised. Yeah, again, that makes sense. Then it will be 33 more days until she is ritually clean from her loss of blood. Because the child, I don't know. Guess that makes sense. Maternity leave? I think biblical maternity leave. That's what I'm gonna say here. It is biblical maternity leave. So if you're at a company that's wanting to deny you maternity leave, be like, honey, this is in the Bible. Look up Leviticus chapter 12. And then you'll be all good. And then, like, if they're a Christian place especially, then they'll give you maternity leave. And if not, since there are all these businesses and such giving crap about, I want my religious right to deny my service to homosexuals, then you can be like, okay, well, my religious right says you give me my maternity leave. So, yeah. Bible helping out women. Woo, girl power. She must not touch anything that is holy or enter the sacred tent until the time of her purification is completed. I don't think this is about anything like sin wise or anything. I think it's just, you don't want her to touch the holy things because then it's all not dirty and then it has to go through a repurification process because the holy. It just, if you think about it like that, it just makes sense. Like, it's not like you're gonna go up and rub your newborn child or your used tampon on the holy thing. So I think it's just keeping things clean, not so much anything about sin or like you can't touch it because it's holy and you're unclean spirit. No, just please don't touch it. You're kind of still in your dirty. Like, get yourself all cleaned up and squared away, and then it'll be good. Because otherwise, we have to go through a purification ritual. Yada yada. I think it's just like that. So, I think people are. I could be wrong, but that's just how, with this version at least, that's how I read it, and I think it just makes sense that that's a way to read it. So, that's what I'm gonna say. Where did I go? For 14 days after a woman gives birth to a daughter, she is ritually unclean, as she is during her monthly period. Then it will be 66 more days until she is ritually clean from her loss of blood. Birth to a daughter. Not sure what the difference is so much. I mean, unless it's just because difference in traits passed down. But, fair enough. When the time of her purification is completed, whether for a son or daughter, she shall bring to the priest at the entrance of the tent of the Lord's presence a 1-year-old lamb for a burnt offering, and a pigeon or a dove for a sin offering. What's sin? A sin offering doesn't make sense. The priest... Oh, for the sin of the newborn child. Not like they've necessarily committed much sin. Maybe, I don't know. Depends on what standards they're being judged by or anything like that. But yeah, to the whole like kind of like the Passover sort of thing. Okay. I was gonna say like childbirth isn't a sin. Okay, that makes sense. The priest shall present her offering to the Lord and perform the ritual to take away her impurity, and she will be ritually clean. It doesn't make her impure. Trying to give this thing credit, it's just not. It's thwarting me. No. I don't know. I honestly can't say. I'm gonna stick with my whole. It's not a whole sin thing. It's just being about being hygienic and such. And the only thing that I see is the sin offering because taking away the... I don't know. Maybe it's because while the wife was pregnant and then in labor she was being a sinful person by spouting off curses at everyone around her while she's in tremendous pain. I don't know. I'm just gonna move on. This then is what a woman must do after giving birth. If the woman cannot afford a lamb, she shall bring 2 doves or 2 pigeons, one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. And the priest shall perform the ritual to take away her impurity, and she will be ritually clean. Just gonna keep moving on to chapter 13. Laws concerning skin diseases. Joy. The Lord gave Moses and Aaron these regulations. If anyone has a sore on his skin, or a boil or an inflammation which could develop into a dread skin disease, I love the use of the word dreaded there, he shall be brought to the Aaronite priest. The priest shall examine the sore, and if the hairs on it have turned white, and the sore appears to be deeper than the surrounding skin, It is a dreaded skin disease, and the priest shall pronounce the person unclean. That makes sense. They've got a disease, so of course they're unclean. Though it does slightly impress me that they automatically recognize the signs for skin disease. Props to their medicine. I know modern medicine. What's the opposite of modern? Ancient medicine, I guess. It is a few thousand years ago, so. Anyway. But if the sore is white and does not appear to be deeper than the skin around it, and hairs have not turned white, the priest shall isolate the person for 7 days. Okay, that makes sense, because they might still be sick and such. And, still figuring out the disease, which they're about to say. The priest shall examine him again on the 7th day, and if in his opinion the sore looks the same and has not spread, he shall isolate him for another 7 days. The priest shall examine him again on the 7th day, and if the sore has faded and has not spread, he shall pronounce him ritually clean. It is only a sore. The person shall wash his clothes and be ritually clean. But if the sore spreads after the priest has examined him and pronounced him clean, he must appear before the priest again. The priest will examine him again, and if it has spread, he shall pronounce him unclean. It is a dreaded skin disease. Okay, preventative measures. That didn't work. Yeah, seems simple enough. If anyone has a dreaded skin disease, he shall be brought to the priest, who will examine him. If there is a white sore on his skin which turns the hairs white and is full of pus, it is a chronic skin disease. Chronic skin disease. Whoa. The priest shall pronounce him unclean. There is no need to isolate him because he is obviously unclean. If the skin disease spreads and covers the person from head to foot, the priest shall examine him again. If he finds that it actually has covered the whole body, he shall pronounce the person ritually clean. What? If the skin disease spreads and covers the person from head to foot, they'll be ritually clean. That doesn't make sense to me. If his whole skin is turned white, he is ritually clean, but from the moment an open sore appears, he is unclean. Okay. Doesn't make sense. Maybe it's like a not bad skin disease sort of thing. Unless they're going to go into a whole what's a sin, not a sin. Because back in this time, they would have thought certain things like if you were blind or deaf or mute or had some kind of disease, they would have thought that it was because of a sin. So maybe they're talking about, because they have this affliction, then they or someone in their family has sinned. So this person is ritually, That's the only other thing that would make sense to me. Because I wouldn't imagine a skin disease. I don't know. Unless that's just a particular kind of skin disease that doesn't affect anyone else. It's not something that spreads very much to other people, at least. That's the only thing I can come up with. The priest shall examine him again, and if he has seen an open sore, he shall pronounce him unclean. An open sore means a dreaded skin disease, and the person is unclean. But when the sore heals and becomes white again, the person shall go to the priest, who will examine him again. If the sore is turned white, he is ritually clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Okay. So if it breaks open... maybe if it breaks open, then it's like the disease... Like the disease does that to them in its own way to spread itself. So if it closes itself, then fine, it's like just a wound. But otherwise, it's bad and don't touch that person because it'll spread to you. Okay. I'm trying to go with, less of all of these things, that everything is a sin and we're bad, to just simple stuff. Like, yeah, it makes sense. In case you haven't figured out, that's what I'm trying to do here. Anyway. If anyone has a boil that has healed, and if afterward a white swelling or a reddish-white spot appears where the boil was, he shall go to the priest. The priest shall examine him, and if the spot seems to be deeper than the surrounding skin, and the hairs in it have turned white, he shall pronounce him unclean. It is a dreaded skin disease that has started in the boil. Ugh. But if the priest examines it and finds that the hairs in it have not turned white and that it is not deeper than the surrounding skin, but is light in color, the priest shall isolate him for 7 days. If the spot spreads, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He is diseased. But if it remains unchanged and does not spread, it is only the scar left from the boil. Makes sense. And the priest shall pronounce him ritually clean. In the case of a person who has been burned, if the raw flesh becomes white or reddish white, the priest shall examine him. If the hairs on the spot have turned white, and if it appears deeper than the surrounding skin, it is a dreaded skin disease that has started in the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. But if the hairs in it have not turned white, and it is not deeper than the surrounding skin, but is light in color, the priest shall isolate him for 7 days. The priest shall examine him again on the 7th day, and if it is spreading, it is a dreaded skin disease, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. But if the spot remains unchanged and does not spread, and is light in color, it is not a dreaded skin disease. The priest shall pronounce him ritually clean, because it is only a scar from the burn. Gee, scars from burns. I can't imagine what. You can't even really see that so well. Short answer is that I work fry station. I work around boiling oil. Some of it splashes on me. I get burned, and then I have scars and such. But yeah, I get a little peckly marked on my arms. I said peckly. I'm weird. But you probably know this at this point, unless you're new. If you're new, hi. I'm not a total weirdo. I don't own my own personal straitjacket. Yet. When a man or a woman has a sore on the head or the chin, the priest shall examine it. If it seems to be deeper than the surrounding skin, and the hairs in it are yellowish and thin, it is a dread skin disease, and he shall pronounce the person unclean. If, when the priest examines him, the sore does not appear to be deeper than the surrounding skin, but there are still no healthy hairs in it, he shall isolate him for 7 days. The priest shall examine the sore again on the 7th day, and if it has not spread, and there are no yellowish hairs in it, and does not seem to be deeper than the surrounding skin, the person shall shave the area around the sore. The priest shall then isolate him for another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall again examine the sore, and if it has not spread, and does not seem to be deeper than the surrounding skin, he shall pronounce him ritually clean. The person shall wash his clothes, and he will be clean. If the sore spreads after he has been pronounced clean, the priest shall examine him again. If the sore is spread, he need not look for yellowish hairs. The person is obviously unclean. But if, in the priest's opinion, the sore is not spread and healthy hairs are growing in it, the sore is healed, and the priest shall pronounce him ritually clean. When a man or a woman has white spots on the skin, the priest shall examine that person. If the spots are dull white, it is only a blemish that has broken out on the skin. The person is ritually clean. If a man loses his hair at the back or the front of his head, this does not make him unclean. But if a reddish-white sore appears on the bald spot, it is a dread skin disease. The priest shall examine him, and if there is a reddish-white sore, the priest shall pronounce him unclean because of the dread skin disease. Bum 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 bum. On his head. Person who has a dread skin disease, bum 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 bum, must wear torn clothes, leave his hair uncombed, cover the lower part of his face, and call out, "Unclean, unclean." He remains unclean as long as he has the disease, and he must live outside the camp away from others. Okay, so basically, if you're unclean, you gotta look unclean, and you have to let everyone know you're unclean, so that nobody gets your skin disease. Makes sense, but at the same time, it sounds very sad, and it is. Laws concerning mildew. When there's mildew on clothing, whether woolen or linen, or on any piece of linen or wool cloth, or on leather or anything made of leather, if it is a greenish or reddish, it is a spreading mildew and must be shown to the priest. The priest shall examine it and put the object away for 7 days. He shall examine it again on the 7th day. If the mildew has spread, the object is unclean. The priest shall burn it, because it is a spreading mildew which must be destroyed by fire. But if, when he examines it, the priest finds that the mildew has not spread on the object, he shall order that it be washed and put away for another 7 days. Then he shall examine it, and if the mildew has not changed color, even though it has not spread, it is still unclean. He must burn the object, whether the rot is on the front or the back. But if, when the priest examines it again, the mildew has faded, he shall tear it out of the clothing or leather. Okay. Then if the mildew reappears, it is spreading again, and the owner shall burn the object. If he washes the object and the spot disappears, he shall wash it again, and it will be ritually clean. This, then, is the law about mildew on clothing, whether it is wool or linen, or on linen or wool cloth, or anything made of leather. Yeah, that makes... Overall, all of that seemed to make a fair bit of sense. Like, it's just, that's, at least for, that day and age, that's how you deal with that stuff, to be hygienic and to be clean so that you're not all dying of disease, which would have been a big thing back then. I mean, it's still a big thing now, like, particularly in certain countries, but not everywhere. Like, it's not as big of a thing in America, except, for us it's cancer. Cancer everywhere. Drink a soda, get cancer. Stand out in the sun too long, get cancer. Breathe too much air and get cancer. It's ridiculous. Cancer is ridiculous. And it's a pain for anyone who does have it. And if you do have it, I'm sorry. My prayers go with you. And bless you. Alright, well, that's where I'm going to end it for today. Thanks for watching. Like and favorite if you enjoyed. Subscribe to become a VIP today. And I will see you all next time. So, have a great day.